The biggest T-Rex story starts where legends live, under museum lights. For years, one specimen wore the crown, Goliath, massive and famously old. Its stats sounded unbeatable: length, age, and sheer presence. But there's a twist most people never saw coming. A new paper points to a rival, one that changes the scoreboard. Meet Big Bertha, a contender with uncomfortable implications. The study argues T-Rex might have gotten far bigger than our fossils suggest, bigger by a margin that feels almost ridiculous. Every few years, a new specimen seems to steal the spotlight. The list keeps growing, and so does the hype. You've heard the biggest ever headline before, so here's what's different. This isn't only about size, it's about how T-Rex grew and aged. It reframes the whole journey from tiny hatchling to giant predator. And it suggests we may have misunderstood that journey for decades. The new results tip our assumptions upside down. It even brushes up against the debate over Nanotyrannus. Rewind to 2010. Researchers set out to compare known T-Rex sizes. The mission was simple: settle who's biggest, with numbers, not vibes. Specimens became data points in a growing that mattered. Sioux had long been treated as the heavyweight benchmark. For a moment, the crown seemed to shift. Then a rumor detonated. A major T-Rex had been sitting in storage, not displayed, not fully studied, just waiting. The wait stretched back to 1987, decades of silence. And still, almost no satisfying explanation reached the public. Even after the rumor, the world had to wait longer. Dinosaur obsessives watched for any scrap of information. In early 2026, the paper finally landed, and it hit hard. The conclusions forced people to rethink how T-Rex lived and matured. Before Bertha, you need the method, because the method is the story. The study is led by Dr. Holly Woodward, a specialist in bone microstructure. Histology means studying tissues from the inside, especially bone. Applied to fossils, it becomes paleohistology, anatomy preserved in stone. Researchers take tiny samples and cut them into ultra-thin sections, thin enough that light can pass through the fossilized tissue. Under a microscope, hidden growth patterns suddenly appear. People compare it to tree rings, but dinosaur bone is more complicated. It can hint at age, stress, hard seasons, and the approach to adulthood. Key markers are lines of arrested growth, often shortened to lags. These lines can signal periods when growth slowed or stopped. When resources dip, bodies pause. When abundance returns, growth continues. Traditionally, each major line is treated roughly like a yearly marker. At full skeletal maturity, the outer bone records a distinct slow-down pattern. That clustered band is called an external fundamental system, an EFS. In big leg bones, a clear EFS is strong evidence the animal was fully grown. Woodward's team sampled 15 T-Rex individuals across a wide age range, enough variety to trace a growth path, not just a snapshot. Earlier work implied a brutal, near-explosive growth phase. The new pattern looks steadier, more linear, stretched across more years. That suggests T-Rex spent much longer in a sub-adult stage. The difference comes down to how growth marks were counted. Past studies focused on select lines. This team counted every visible marker. With that approach, some older individuals might reach their late 30s, even 40s. Imagine a predator surviving 4 decades in a brutal ecosystem. That's a major jump from the usual lifespan estimates people cite. If you're still with me, drop a bone emoji for the growth ring detectives. And if you want more deep dives like this, consider subscribing. Now, back to Bertha, the specimen that sparked the fireworks. The team examined The outer bone layers were wrapping up in one leg bone but not the other. That raises a fascinating possibility. Different bones may finish at different times. It's too early for certainty, but it's an exciting clue worth testing. The next step is checking whether the pattern repeats across other individuals. Age depends on which growth marks you treat as yearly signals. Using the clearest markers, Bertha likely died in the late 20s. Counting every cortical mark pushes the estimate dramatically higher, into the 40s. That would make Bertha not only huge, possibly one of the oldest, too. A 4-decade apex predator would shape everything around it. Longer-lived giants could mean longer dominance, more competition, and fewer openings. Which brings us to the question everyone asks first: size. One reliable proxy is femoral circumference, the thickness of the thigh bone. Thick femur usually means heavy animal because it carries the load. Many big adults cluster around roughly 500 to 550 millimeters. At the low end of that range, reconstructions land around 9 tons. Scotty's circumference sits around 570 millimeters, with estimates above 10 tons. Sue is similar, mid-570s, possibly higher depending on measurement standardization. Body mass estimates vary because muscles and fat change.
But damage near the ends makes lengthened scaling far less secure. And scaling a whole animal from one bone always carries risk. Sometimes a specimen might just have unusually robust proportions. Nature does that. Bertha's femur was first measured in a distorted, compressed state. Even then, the circumference reading was already high. Woodward's team then used the sampled section to build a digital reconstruction. Correcting distortion changed the measurement in a big way. The reconstructed circumference came out at 598 millimeters. Then came another twist. The slice wasn't taken at the thinnest point, meaning Bertha's true circumference was likely greater than 598. That maps to an animal around 12.5 meters long, depending on the model, and a mass estimate in the neighborhood of 11 to 12 tons. A giant among giants, no question. The real shock is Bertha's growth status compared to its apparent age. Sue seems to have finished growing, then lived many years as a full adult. Bertha, meanwhile, hovered right at the edge of completion. Two similar-aged T-Rexes, one done growing, one still adding bone. That kind of within-species variation resembles the diversity we see in humans. It hints at serious growth plasticity inside a single species. Now, the small Tyrannosaur controversy. Separate species or young T-Rex? The argument has been loud, technical, and surprisingly emotional. One recent study presented evidence favoring a distinct species interpretation. Woodward's team included 2 specimens, often labeled Nanotyrannus, Jane and Petey. Their growth patterns didn't match the confirmed T-Rex trajectory. The authors stayed careful, suggesting difference without overclaiming taxonomy. Even without them, the sample of confirmed T-Rex remains unusually large. The best fit analysis produced a striking growth timeline. T-Rex may have stayed subadult for roughly 2 full decades. During that stretch, the model suggests about 360 kilograms gained each year. A 10-year-old might hover around a ton, still dangerous, but not colossal. Survive to 20, and you could pass 4.5 tons. After that, growth likely continued, but with a slow taper. This pattern resembles other giant theropods more than we used to think. It challenges the idea that T-Rex was uniquely turbocharged in growth. Instead, size may come from consistency, steady growth over a long life. The youngest individual in the dataset died around 10 years old. Bone microstructure links its earliest mark to a surprisingly small body mass. The estimate lands around a few dozen kilograms at that first recorded stage. Picture a hatchling not much bigger than a big dog already building a giant skeleton. The transformation from small starter body to apex monster is one of nature's wildest arcs. There's also debate about splitting Hell Creek tyrannosaurs into multiple species. Proposed names include Tyrannosaurus imperator, Rex, and Regina. The argument leans on proportion differences and how robust certain bones look. Is that split necessary? The new study tries to answer using growth evidence. The growth signatures across the T.Rex sample look consistent with one species. Differences may reflect normal variation like height and build differences in people. That doesn't end the taxonomy debate. It just means growth lines aren't strong support for a triple split. Another key point, reproductive maturity isn't the same as skeletal adulthood. Some look for medullary bones seen in birds during egg production as an adulthood clue. It sounds logical, but it can mislead. Modern reptiles can reproduce for years while still growing larger. Dinosaurs may have done the same sexual maturity first, growth completion later. Extreme size projections exist under strong dimorphism assumptions, but the paper treats that cautiously. The reliable maturity marker remains histology, especially spotting an EFS in major limb bones. Without that, claims about adulthood can drift from evidence into guesswork. The paper emphasizes, some size estimates are modeling exercises, not fossil facts. And the biggest point may be broader. We probably haven't found the largest individual. The ground still holds surprises, maybe even a larger T-Rex than any known. Each discovery fills holes and also reveals new ones. More specimens, more sections, more analysis. This story isn't finished. For now, Bertha expands what we think T-Rex could be. Not just a bigger body, but a different timeline of growth and aging. The bones don't just fossilize, they record a life. If you made it to the end, leave a dinosaur emoji so I know. Subscribe if you want the next fossil mystery as soon as it drops. There's always more to uncover, and we're not done asking questions. Thanks for watching. See you next time.